In today's workshop, that was led by Dr. Tola Dabiri and Sebastian Terberg, we looked at intangible cultural heritage and the importance of cultural heritage in the area and how things have been overlooked by cultural heritage institutions and professionals who have mainly focused on tangible heritage assets.
The goal of the workshop is to raise awareness and take people from being unconscious incompetent to conscious incompetent. And we use those words not in a derogatory way, but it's to actually just make sure that at the end of the workshop, people have an awareness and an understanding of the challenges and opportunities that intangible cultural heritage presents.
We opened up with a discussion on intangible cultural heritage. Can you remind us a bit of what some of the comments that were shared during the chat, but also shared via the participants?
Some very interesting things emerged actually, particularly around the different ways of expressing intangible cultural heritage that can be found. We had two exercises, one which was to design and decorate a mask to which would express one's own identity, and the second was to sort of like develop a shared language by looking at the words we use when we're talking about intangible cultural heritage and developing a word cloud. What was really interesting was the different interpretations of the uses of the mask. I was thinking of masks as expressing oneself, but there is also the idea that masks can actually disguise yourself and hide things, that masks are used in different ways in different rituals to represent deities on earth or to communicate with deities, to ask them for different things.
Not only things maybe like ethnicity or religion came up, but also sports or hobbies or other ways that they perceive themselves as being part of a community. This is a very simple exercise, but already surfaces the different ways that you can talk about communities and think about communities.
So that was a very interesting discussion around just really when you just take one object, the different ways that it can be interpreted and the intangible cultural heritage that it contains. The word cloud was very interesting as well, because in developing a shared language, we discussed whether or not it was possible to develop a classification for intangible cultural heritage and into dance, into music performance, and whether or not this was a helpful or an unhelpful thing to develop a shared language or to develop a classification. Would that lead to intangible cultural heritage becoming formulated and boxed and reduced? Or is it a way that would make it easier to disseminate information about it? So we had a really very interesting discussion around those two aspects of that part of the morning.
There was also the point of your biases and your positionality and where you're starting from and how that informs the way that you might design or pose a question. And it was quite lovely to see, Tola, how you acknowledged the your own background and you, to use your words, biases of thinking about masks. And so reflecting on what masks mean to you, and so that's conversation and dialogue was really modeling, I think, what we hope the workshops are doing is this reflective process. And that moves me into the second part of the session, where we had case studies. And I don't know if either of you want to comment on that part of the session.
I think what came out of it was, for me, was a really strong acknowledgement from the participants that when working in intangible cultural heritage, it's important to work with stakeholders. It isn't something that can be done successfully without the practitioners and without the communities. So I think what came out of it for me was, that I found very exciting, was an acknowledgement of the need to engage with local communities from the start. So that isn't something that cultural heritage institutions can do on their own. So for me, that was a very, very important thing, that forming relationships, working with stakeholders, going out of the building, that was very important. And I'm glad that that's something that people took away from the session.
I don't want to add anything because I don't want to spoil the experience of discussing these case studies with your own team. The workshop was designed for people to repeat it, to repeat these exercises in other places, and also that the workshop material will be offered in such a way that even if you did not participate now, you could still do the workshop yourself later on in your own organization or with other people that you want to learn about this topic with.